Game development is a really long process, and issues within a studio can further complicate this, with delays, budget cuts, and staff issues. It's honestly impressive when games come out mostly unharmed by these factors. But what about the ones that never really made it? The games that get stuck in development hell? Well, today we're going to look at one of the most well-known cases of this happening, Duke Nukem Forever. I'm going to go over why it ended up with so many issues and what ended up being released. The first two games in the Duke Nukem series were side-scrolling platformers, developed by Apogee Software in the early 90s, but it wasn't until Duke Nukem 3D, published under the 3D Realms name, that the character became a household name with its impressive gameplay, solid visuals, and of course the humour, raunchy themes and violence that the series is known for. A lot of controversy arose surrounding its release, as critics in certain countries wanted to see the game banned for promoting pornography and murder, but ultimately survived all of this to become a top-selling game of the 90s. With such success, it was obvious that 3D Realms wanted to develop a sequel, and just over a year after the launch of Duke Nukem 3D, Duke Nukem Forever was announced. Originally slated for a late 1998 release, the studio were anticipating it to be the start of a long-lasting franchise. And they were right, sort of. The game was initially developed using the Quake 2 engine, and at E3 in 1998, they had the first trailer ready for public viewing. However, behind the scenes problems started to arise. George Broussard, the director of the project, was apparently not impressed with the game, and didn't want it to fall behind the times with outdated technology, and so the project was discarded, and the team moved over to the Unreal Engine, which offered more realism and easier rendering for open spaces. After the jump to the new engine, Broussard announced that the game would only be delayed by a month or two, but in fact, the project had actually been restarted in its entirety. The game constantly missed deadlines and release dates, suffered from major issues, and the team working on it were not sharing the same vision. The game was then moved to a newer version of the Unreal Engine, as it had better support for multiplayer, which showed the lack of vision that the project ultimately suffered with a director trying desperately to keep up with the evolving technology and straying away from the core vision of the project. Not releasing a project over and over again obviously caused financial issues for the studios involved, and after some acquisitions, Gathering of Developers and then Take-Two Interactive were given the publishing rights to this title. In 2001, at E3, another trailer was shown to the public, the first in 3 years, of Duke Nukem buying a sandwich from a vending machine. The graphical fidelity of the demo impressed critics enough to create another buzz about the title, and it was clear that the studio had been working hard on implementing a lot of technical aspects to the game. However, this would prove to be nothing more than a trick. In 2022, a few development builds of this early version were leaked, and it was clear that it was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Broussard came out in response to say that they should never have made this trailer and that it wasn't a realistic representation of the game at the time. In 2003, Take-Two announced the game wasn't going to be released that year, and they had written off $5.5 million from their earnings as a result of the development of Duke Nukem Forever. This didn't sit well with Broussard, which caused some unwelcome conflict. Once again, the game received a release window somewhere around the end of 2004 to the beginning of 2005, and once again, it missed this window. It's now 2006, and it was reported that Duke Nukem Forever's individual elements were all finished, and it was just a case of putting it together and trying to make it all work. At this point, the staff that were working on the game were sick and tired of it all. As the development had been going for 9 years at this point, a lot of the team that were working on the game had been developing Duke Nukem Forever for their entire careers, and as the game wasn't being released, they weren't seeing any of the profits either. Developers started to leave the studio, questions about the studio's survival arose, but they were still confident this game would be released. In 2007, the newly hired creative director, Raphael van Lierop, tested the game and stated that the game could be finished and released with great success in a short amount of time. However, this was shot down by Broussard, saying it still needed 2 more years. In one last push, 3D Realms started expanding the team to get the game completed and once again released a trailer. The game didn't receive a specific release date, but but instead the team stated that there's definitely more to come soon enough. Duke Nukem Forever was finally nearing completion. However, they were running out of money fast. Overall, this development had cost Broussard and Miller over $20 million and had to seek out further funding from Take-Two. After initially agreeing on $6 million, this was later adjusted to $2.5 million upfront with another $2.5 on completion, and this is where the development froze. After rejecting the offer, Broussard ceased all development on the project and it was over. After layoffs and lawsuits between 3D Realms and Take-Two, all that was left was the memory of Duke Nukem Forever. But it wasn't all doom and gloom for the Duke. Former employees at 3D Realms continued development on the project independently and founded Triptych Games, and worked alongside Gearbox to potentially revive the project. And once again, the game was announced, Penny Arcade Expo 2010, and for the first time there was a playable demo. Gamers lined up to play the game, and it was a shock to the industry that it seemed like this was the time that the game would finally be released. Thanks to Gearbox and Triptych Games, Duke Nukem Forever had officially gone gold on the 24th of May 2011 and hit the shelves on the 10th of June. Overall, the development had seen multiple engines, studios and generations of games come and go, but after 14 years and 43 days, the game was completed. And after all of this time, the game received a Metacritic score of 54 out of 100. The game was ultimately panned for being boring and uninspired, and that most of the jokes and references really felt out of date by the time people actually got to see them. Take-Two Interactive stated that the game sales numbers were half of what they had expected, selling 376,000 units in the first month, however later claimed it would somehow prove to be profitable. After a terrible development cycle, poor reception, and ultimately the cause of mental and financial strain on those involved, Duke Nukem Forever would truly live up to its name, as it's remembered as the definition of development hell.
Oh man, that is... I mean, I don't understand any of it, but I bet if I did, that guy over there would still have his arm. And at least one of his balls.